This podcast is a proud member of the Unidentified Network.
On the Track is a web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues, and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
So, what have we got exciting that's coming up in this episode, Mr. John?
Well, Hennis, in this week's episode, we're going to do something rather new, I suppose. We're going to talk to my old friend Richard Freeman, who's one of the world's leading cryptozoologists, about the 10 cryptids he believes actually will be found.
I really like the old credits.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Lyons. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology. And, hang on, what's happening over there?
So, you've been getting out and about then with the kids from the outreach centre in Brixton, eh, Rossiter? Oh yes, we have been doing some natural history stuff by the seaside. Oh no, what have you been doing? Well, there was the bloated carcass of a fin whale that had washed up on the beach, and it was dangerously full of explosive methane gas, and I had the kids poking at it and having to go at it with chainsaws till it went off pop.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and welcome to another episode of On the Track. For those of you who don't know, On the Track is a show which comes out twice a week, on Wednesday evenings at 6:30 and on Saturday afternoons at 3 for about half an hour. The Wednesday evening show, by the way, is for about half that, although those times are totally approximate and quite often are never adhered to. It is, for those of you who do not know, a mishmash, a mélange, a mixture, a montage, Richard, what begins with M?
Hello.
I still can't think of anything beginning with M. Are you there, McCrinnan?
Yes.
What begins with M?
Nuisance.
Nuisance. What?
M.
M for monkey.
I don't know. You already said a melange. You already said a.
You know
a
what?
Manufactory cornucopia.
That's wonderful, McCrinnan. You know what, ladies and gentlemen, V. McCrinnan is also in the co-pilot seat this week, and so between him and the boy Freeman, I confidently expect there to be an awful lot of nonsense talked. But as I was saying, it is a show which is a mix-up and blah, 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 blah of hard science, weird shit, and surreality. And if you don't know what surreality is, let's ask her.
Surreality is not
not the sort of thing that a well-brought-up young lady talks about. So let's not talk about it. So there.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, as we said at the beginning of the show, this is where Richard, over the next few episodes, goes through in some detail the cryptids that he thinks are most likely to exist. However, because this is a Richard Freeman special show, we decided we needed a guest presenter, and so we decided that this episode and the rest of this series will be presented by the late, great Alan Freeman.
Greetings, pop piggers. Here's the top 10 cryptids that Rich thinks will be proven as real. At number 10, the giant anaconda.
Number 10, the giant anaconda. That's another one that I've been on the trail of. All over tropical South America, since the first Europeans went there, there are stories of anacondas far larger than the biggest officially recognised measured individual, which was about 27 feet. Now, when I say giant anaconda, I don't believe that there are ones 100 feet long. I think there are maybe ones 40, 45, 50 feet maybe. Similar size to the prehistoric Titanoboa, but these I think are either green anacondas, northern green anacondas, or they're another subspecies of anaconda. They're not a prehistoric survivor. But again, there are so many of these reports and they're so consistent. These huge snakes, and the tribes people of South America, the natives, all talk about them and recognise that they can get much, much bigger than we think they can. The old gauchos, the South American cowboys, used to call them the manatora, or bull killer, because they were big enough, powerful enough to constrict and swallow full-grown bulls in the way that a boa constrictor would swallow a rat. And when I went over there, I went to Guyana with Damon Corrie, our guide, who was an Eagle Clan Arawak chief. But unfortunately, when we were there was such terrible droughts, the worst in living memory. Even the local people couldn't remember it being that hot. We couldn't get out to the very remote swamps where these things had been seen, unfortunately. So if I was to go back again, I'd probably be going to Ecuador and Peru, some of the very remote areas of Ecuador and Peru where these things have been reported. Because the anaconda spends most of its time in water, the female retains her eggs inside of her and they hatch inside her and she gives birth to live young, so she doesn't have to come out onto land to lay eggs. So they spend almost all their time in water, buoyed up by the water, so they can get very big and bulky. And in South America, they'll be eating small caimans, deer, domestic cows, tapirs, jaguars, anything that they could get their teeth into. And the jungle would be a buffet for these giant snakes. And we know that giant snakes evolved in South America before with Titanoboa, which was incidentally more closely related to the boa constrictor than the anaconda, and it fed primarily on fish.
In with the bullet at number 9, the pink-headed duck.
Number 9, the pink-headed duck. And the pink-headed duck was a duck with a pink head, and it was found across India and some of the surrounding countries like Burma and so forth. And it seemed to have disappeared for reasons that are unclear. It doesn't appear to have been hunted in the way that some other extinct birds were persecuted. Nobody really knows why it disappeared, but it seems to have vanished from India. But in remote parts of Burma, there are still reports of it. and there was one guy who's taken several expeditions to remote parts of Burma looking for it, and he has talked to people that have seen it. Now, what was his name? Can you remember his name?
Richard Thorne.
That's it, Richard Thorns. And he's off his own bat. He's financed these expeditions very impressively, and he's gone to remote areas where he shouldn't go in Burma and officially and talk to witnesses. So once again, we've got a remote area in a country that isn't very open, where this creature could still be living. It's not a big animal. It's a duck. It's not a dinosaur in the Congo or anything like that. It's a small bird, a small water bird, and Burma is a big place where few Westerners go, with a hell of a lot of wilderness in it. So the pink-headed duck is imminently possible as a survivor.
Haven't there also been reports from Nepal?
It wouldn't surprise me. Richard Thorne should really write a book about his expeditions.
You wouldn't have to be quackers to believe in it, would you?
No.
Oh, for goodness sake, McCrinnan!
How big was it? Is it thought to have been related to the Peking ducks?
This thing, the pink-headed duck, it's a species in its own right. It's roughly the size of your average mallard, yeah. But it's got a very distinctive pink head.
That's what she said.
And at number 8, the Iriamoti mystery cats of Japan. Not half, mate.
Number 8, the mystery cat of Iriamote. Iriamote is an island on an archipelago off the southern coast of Japan, and it belongs to Japan, and they are semi-tropical islands with small populations. Now, a species of wildcat was discovered there in 1969, and also a species of miniature pig found nowhere else in the world. Now, alongside these two animals, local people say that there is a larger cat, much bigger than the Iriamote wildcat, the size of a medium-sized dog, and it's supposed to have stripes like a tiger. Very little is known about this. As far as I know, there's never been an official investigation into it, and certainly never one from the West. It's one of the forgotten cryptids that I really want to go and look for. I think it could be a dwarf island form of the clouded leopard. And we know there are two types of clouded leopard, the mainland clouded leopard and the Sundar clouded leopard. Or the other possibility is that it's a weird hybrid between feral domestics and the Iriamote wildcat, because we know that sometimes feral cats can get very big, and hybrids between feral cats and wildcats can get very big. So it's a mystery that needs solving. It's one that there's not a whole lot of information about, and to me that makes it all the more intriguing.
As it's described as having stripes, is there any reason why it couldn't be a dwarf island form of tiger?
I'd never considered that before, just due to the size, because the size is it's smaller than the known species of clouded leopards. I think it's roughly the size of a border collie. So if it was a dwarf island tiger, it would be a fantastically small one, and that it would be a Lilliputian tiger, which would be utterly amazing. So it could be any one of those three things, but it needs looking at, and no one's doing it, and I'd very much like to do it. And I've always wanted to go to Japan anyway.
I wonder why.
It's where Godzilla comes from.
Louis, our producer, has wanted to go along on this expedition, and he said something about love hotels. He's been looking them up, and there's at least one on Iriamote.
how big are these Lilliputian tigers supposed to be? Are they like sort of tabby cats?
No, no, no. They're about the size of a medium-sized dog, about the size of a border collie.
Wow, I'd love to have a tiger that size.
Well, we don't know if they are tigers. They might be. They might be a type of clouded leopard, or they might be a hybrid type of cat, or they might be something completely unknown.
One interesting thing is that Iriomote is closer to Taiwan than it is to the rest of Japan. And Taiwan does have a recently rediscovered race of clouded leopards, the Formosan clouded leopard, which still lives there. And as we know that the clouded leopards have speciated at least once, because there are now two species, the mainland clouded leopard and the Sundar clouded leopard, which lives in the archipelago which is all that's left of the prehistoric Sundarland. What subspecies of the two subspecies are the clouded leopards on Taiwan? In fact, has anybody ever tried to find out? And as Iriomote is even further out to see if the Iriomote mystery cat is indeed a new type of clouded leopard, is it a third species, or is it one of the previous two known species? This is something that fascinates me.
If it's speciated, does that mean that it might have already gone through the process that the Scottish wildcats are going through, with feral domestics mating with them and watering down their genetics?
Well, one of my theories is that if it isn't a dwarf island form of the clouded leopard, then it could be a hybrid between the Iriomote wildcat, which is related to the Indian leopard cat, and domestic cats.
We know that leopard cats and domestic cats will interbreed, and you used to see a lot of feral cats in the villages in Hong Kong that had obviously their mother had been amorous with a wild leopard cat. But as far as I'm aware, there are no records of them producing the gigantism which has been reported both in Europe and in Australia. But there's always a first time.
Like with the ligers?
Well, yes, because ligers are bigger than either of the two parent species. They're bigger than either lions or tigers. It's something called hybrid vigor.
That's what she said.
Following up closely at number 7, it's the Tibetan Yeti.
Number 7, the Yeti. Now, with the Yeti, I'm including similar things from mainland Asia, like the Mande Burung of India and the Chinese Yeren, because they're all probably one in the same. Attempts to try and explain the Yeti away as a bear fall completely flat. Bears are quadrupedal animals. They move on all fours. When they stand on their hind legs, it's a threat posture, or they're looking around for something. They don't move on their hind legs for long periods. Their scapula, the shoulder blades, lie flat against the body. They're not jutting out like humans have. And the Yeti has these great broad shoulders that a bear doesn't have. The Yeti has a short snout and a gorilla-like face, not the long snout of a bear. Its ears are on the side of its head, not at the top. And most telling of all, the Yeti has an opposable grasp, which a bear doesn't have. It can pick up and hurl rocks, it can swing clubs, so it's some sort of primate. 2018, a British vet called Mark Evans took an expedition into the highlands of Bhutan looking for the Yeti, and they took samples from a lake there, and a French geneticist called Dr. Eva Bellarmine examined these for environmental DNA. They found the eDNA of Marco Polo sheep, which were unknown in the area up until then. But they also found the DNA of a primate, a higher primate. And whatever this higher primate was, it shared something like 98 or 99% of its genetic makeup with modern man. So it was more closely related to modern man than a chimpanzee is. There are no known apes in Bhutan. There are monkeys, but they're not as genetically close to us as apes are. So this is either a great ape or some colossal form of hominin. But apart from orang pendek and Homo floresiensis, of all the mystery primates, I think that the Yeti is pretty near the top of ones likely to exist. You don't get people running around in gorilla costumes in mountain forests in the wilds of Tibet and Bhutan and eastern Nepal.
The Yeti is also one of the cryptids about which there is a remarkable amount of misinformation.
Yes, that's the idea that it's white. It's not. It's not white at all. The Yeti is reported as being black, dark grey, gingery, and most often brown, but not white. It comes from a mistranslation of one of the many local names for the Yeti, the Sino-Tibetan Mito Kangme, Abominable Man of the Rocks. It was mistranslated as Abominable Man of the Snows, and that's where we get this idea of a white-furred animal. It doesn't live above the snow line because there's no food up there for it. The place to find it would be the mountain forests, the productive forest areas where any big primate could scratch a living, because if you go up above the snow line, there's just nothing there for it to eat. But the forests are very productive, and the primatologist Ian Redmond is convinced that the Yeti exists, and the place to find it is the forests. It was mistranslated, I think, via telegraph originally, not the paper. I mean the way of communication, the telegraph.
The Daily Mail was responsible for the famous Eric Shipton photographs, I believe.
There were. They also organised an expedition, but they went up above the snow line, and there were hundreds of them, so they would have frightened anything away if it was there anyway.
What do you think of the Shipton photographs?
I think they're a red herring. I think they're the photographs of the tracks of a known animal that has thawed, because they're in snow. These tracks are thawed out and then frozen again, and then thawed out and frozen again, and distorted. So then I don't think they're the tracks of a Yeti. Most reports of Yeti tracks, like Sasquatch tracks, are similar to human tracks, but much, much bigger, with a broader heel and lacking an arch.
Well, there was that one case of that lady that was she was cow herding, and she got grabbed by one.
Yes, yeah, that was 1974, and she was herding yaks, and she heard this whistling cry, and then she saw the creature, which she said had black fur and walked upright like a man, and it grabbed a hold of her and threw her in a river, and she passed out. And when she had woken up, it had killed the yaks by twisting their necks, grabbing the horns and twisting their necks. The Yeti is supposed to, it's an omnivore, it eats both meat and vegetable matter. Its ecological twin is the brown bear, and it's supposed to kill yaks either by hurling rocks at their heads, grabbing the horns and twisting the neck and breaking it, or simply punching the head. And if it was a bear attacking them, the bear would be biting and clawing at them.
Yes, because that's what they do.
And she said it ate the tongues. It ate mainly the tongues. It tore out the tongues and ate them. And it ate other parts as well, but it was mainly the tongues of the yaks.
I've heard that from South America claimed about the Dai as well.
What, they eat tongues?
Yes.
Also, this neck breaking thing, that's been reported of Sasquatch in America, isn't it? That's a popular thing people say that they jump out on things and then just twist the neck and kill things that way. So maybe it's the same thing. Maybe it's
Very
the same or
clearly,
close
probably
thing.
the same kind of an animal.
Yeah.
I remember back in 1967 when my family were on holiday in Scotland with my grandmother, and we were at a restaurant, and the meal of the day was cold tongue. And my grandmother said, "I'm not going to eat something that's been in an animal's mouth. Bring me an egg."
And that's all for this week's episode, Pop Pickers. And don't forget to join us for more next week of Richard Freeman's Most Likely Real World Cryptids. Not off.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, says,
Don't forget to ring the notification bell, otherwise you'll miss the new episodes.
and that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it?
If you've been affected by any of the topics in today's episode, you can just bugger off, because we don't give a monkeys. Bloody well get a grip. Sort your own bloody problems out rather than ringing up somewhere.
Before we come to the end, I want you to watch this appeal for my old friend Lars Thomas.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name's John Downs. I'm the director of an organisation called the Centre for Fortean Zoology, which is the largest mystery animal research group in the English-speaking world, and we like to think the best. We've been going now for over 30 years, and in those 3 decades we have sometimes carried out campaigns to try to raise money for equipment or for expedition expenses. But one thing we never do is to raise money for ourselves, because money is nowhere near as important as the search for expanding the boundaries of human knowledge, which is, at the risk of sounding horribly self-important, what this organisation is all about. However, we are a family in a very real sense, and there have been times over the years that we have made appeals to raise money for members of the CFZ family who are down on their luck. And this time I want to tell you about my friend Lars Thomas. He was one of the earliest members of the Centre for Fortean Zoology back when in 1994 we started publishing our magazine Animals and Men, and I have known him therefore for 30 years this year, which seems to be a remarkable length of time. He has recently become very ill, and he's in a hospital, partially paralysed and not able to work or indeed do anything very much. And so Richard Freeman phoned me the other night and suggested that we do a crowdfunding exercise to try and raise some money for him while he is in such a dire straits. And so I had a word with Miss Guinevere, and she went and set it all up. And you can read all about the appeal here at this link. What I would like to say, ladies and gentlemen, is that Lars is a very nice, sweet and kind man who's been very kind and generous to all of us over the years, and it's about time, I think, that the CFZ paid something back. Please dig deep in your pockets and do whatever you can to support this very worthwhile appeal.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the end of another episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed putting it together. I want to say a big thank you to the people but for whom this episode could never have been made. First of all, my guest, Richard Freeman, and my old friend V. McCrimmon, who's in the co-pilot seat, and I think I should also thank the late Alan Freeman for his, what do we say, contribution, I think is the word.
Not half.
Yes, Alan. Yes, Fluff. Well, we all know what a fluffer is, don't we? Oh dear, 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 dear. Somehow you give somebody a little bit part in a show and they suddenly want to take it over with carry-on film style hijinks.
Don't talk about Richard like that. It's not fair.
Oh dear, dear, dear. I also want to say a big thank you to my producer, Louis, and to my deputy director, Graham Inglis, who, as well as being deputy director of the CFZ, is also my carer, and he's the person who gets me in and out of my wheelchair, wheels me around hospitals when I have to go to have things done, gets me up in the morning, puts me to bed at night, feeds me my medicine at the right time because I have a horrible tendency without it of taking the wrong stuff, and generally does so much less stuff in my life that otherwise I probably wouldn't still be alive. Thanks, mate. I do totally and utterly appreciate it. And I want to say a big thank you to the lovely Gwyn Palmer, who's not very well at the moment, and I hope you're feeling better soon, honey pie. Gwyn is the Assistant Director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology and a dear, sweet friend of mine whom I love dearly and who does so much behind the scenes now that we truly wouldn't be able to function without her. Now, are you listening, Mr. McCrinnan? Oi!
Yes.
You are listening, Mr. McCrinnan.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to be back on Wednesday. What are we talking about on Wednesday? I think it's quite likely that we'll be going through the latest issue of Richard Muirhead's magazine, Flying Snake, but I'm not going to promise about that, but it seems like a great likelihood.
It'll be a melange, so
It'll be a melange. Yes, and other things beginning with M.
Yes.
And we're going to be back on Saturday, and I can tell you what we're doing on Saturday, because we'll have the second part of Richard Freeman's top 10 of the cryptids that he believes are most likely to be discovered. So, will you be watching it, Mr. McCrinnan?
Not off.
I knew you were going to say that. I'm not sure why. Because if you're watching it, I'm going to be there watching it because I'm going to be doing the, the live chat and the notifications and all the other stuff that I do every Saturday afternoon. And if I'm there watching it, and you're there watching it, then I'll be seeing you.